So this is going to be a video about endless motivation, and it's the first video in a series of videos that I'm going to be doing on the topic of endless motivation, and I'm going to be doing this specifically because it's an area that I have a lot to teach, and frankly I have so many other areas that I like to teach, and I feel like you can't even access those areas unless you have a high level of motivation. In other words, I've taught a lot about social skills, about how to make money, about how to expand your consciousness, and many, many other things, but if you're not motivated, then you're stuck, and this just winds up becoming infotainment. So what I'd like to do in this series of endless motivation is get you to a point where it's not just you watching this as some kind of weird entertainment, but you actually cross a threshold, and I'm a little bit confrontational with you to where you actually start taking the action, okay? So if you're somebody who wants the results and you're serious about getting fired up, this is gonna be a video series that's gonna change your life. Now, the first concept that I'm gonna explain to you is the idea of would versus could. And this is one of the ones that I think about all the time, would versus could. And the idea of would versus could is there's things that in theory you could do. You could do almost anything, but the question is, would you? And this is something I think is very, very confusing because you think to yourself that you have this big menu of options in your life of things that you could go out and do today, but in reality, you actually physically can't. And unless you can get your motivation dialed in, it doesn't, like, in other words, you know, I can just touch the ground right here, right? I can physically do that. But if I can't make myself touch that right there, it might as well be as far back as Mount Rainier back there. Does that make sense? Like, this little piece of concrete here might as well be as far away as Mount Rainier if I can't motivate myself to touch it. So we think about this menu of options that we have in life, like these different things that we could go do, but in reality, we can't. And the reason that we can't is because we lack the motivation to do so. So that's the first understanding, is that if you lack the motivation to do something, it doesn't matter what you in theory could do, you just can't do it. Now, by the way, this flies directly in the face of a lot of what we would teach you in personal growth, which is this idea that what one person could do, another person could do, okay? That's an idea that actually I got when I was like 15. There's a movie called The Edge with Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin, and they're being hunted down by a grizzly bear in Alaska. And Alec Baldwin's character is very, very demoralized. He kind of just wants to lay there and die. And then Anthony Hopkins fires him up. He's like, what one man could do, another could do. Say it with me, Bob, say it with me. And he's like, what one man could do, another could do. And I remember I was like 15, 16 or something.
Say it, I'm gonna kill the bear. Say it, I'm gonna kill the bear. Say it. Say I'm gonna kill the bear. Say it.
I'm gonna kill the bear.
Say it again.
I'm gonna kill the bear.
And again. I'm gonna kill the bear. Good. What one man can do, another can do.
What one man can do, another can do.
Say it again.
What one man can do, another can do.
And again.
What one man can do, another can do.
Yeah. You're goddamn right.
I actually started crying when I saw that, because I realized at that point that he was correct, that I had a sort of a pocket of apathy that I hadn't dealt with, and that really what one person could do, another person really can do, but that wasn't truly in my mind. I had never felt myself as being that much at the cause of my results. I always thought I was sort of the victim and sort of at the effect of my results. That movie, The Edge, about them being trapped in Alaska, being chased by a bear, was one of the first times in my young age that it occurred to me that I could be at the cause of my own life, that I could shape my own life. I didn't fully get that. So this idea of what one person could do, another could do, I adopted that and I went crazy with it. And I actually took that to the fullest that I was able to. But unfortunately, what I've also seen happen is that people take that idea of like, you know, like a celebrity is just like a person like you. You know, that business owner is just a person like you. And they take that idea and they go too far with it, because yes, you could do what Elon Musk did, but you have to have the motivation to do so. There's some luck components in there as well. I'll get into that later in the video or maybe in the series. But the point being is that you could do anything. Anything that I've done, you could do. But you have to have the motivation. So it doesn't matter what you could do. All that matters is what you would do, okay? And there is so much to this, okay? An example that I use a lot is I say, let's imagine right now that I told you that there was a specific dome around Alaska and you could never ever go to Alaska. I told you there's a dome around it and you personally can't go to Alaska. You'd probably be offended by that. You'd be like, that's not true. You might even get it to the point where in your head, you would do whatever it takes to go to Alaska just to prove that you're not banned from Alaska, right? It'd almost make you want it more. You go get it, right? You get in. But in reality, if you wouldn't actually go to Alaska, if you wouldn't actually do it, there is a dome. Now, what is that dome? That dome could be everything from the fact that you have a certain amount of rent that you pay, and a certain car bill that you have, and cell phone bill and things like that, certain obligations and a job that you have that doesn't allow for you to have the time to do that. And you'll keep kicking the can down the road and you'll never actually go. That could be part of it. Another part of it could be that a place like Alaska is so beautiful and it actually kind of breaks you out of this sort of like hamster wheel of society that you're in, the sort of trance that you're in, and it would break you out of that, and it would be so beautiful and so presence-inducing that you can't resonate with it. Another could be a sort of a status barrier that you have, where you feel like, you know, that's not for you, and so you're not able to go do it. But the end result, ultimately, with something like Alaska, just a simple example, is that you might, you know, watch a movie like The Edge, you might have a curiosity to go, but you're never going to actually go. It doesn't matter that you could go. What matters is if you would go. But if you wouldn't go, that means that you can't go. Okay? So the basic idea here is that there's like 99.9% of the menu that you think you have, unless you get your motivation down, you don't actually have. Unless you can learn how to trick your brain into getting it to do what you want to do. It's funny how that works. So, you know, I was out here with my buddy John, and we were talking about going to, say, Olympic Park while we're out here in the Northwest. And he was saying, you know, we've got a lot to do, maybe we should head back home. And he's right, he's not wrong about that. He's 100% correct. What I was saying to John was, listen, if not now, then when? Like, we're here, we're in Seattle. Olympic Park is 2.5 hours away. We haven't been back to Seattle in 4 years. We're probably not coming back here for another 4 years, although, I don't know, you know, I had such a great time here, I'm kind of tempted to come back. But you can't assume that. You know, I'll say this, I'll go do, like, say, a free event in Charlotte, North Carolina. I haven't been there in 20 years. And people are like, could you just, like, do it, like, next week? Or they see me on the street after the event, they're like, you'll be back next year, right? Like, never even doing the math to think of what a loss that is for me to come to a small market like Charlotte when I could be in New York, San Francisco, Chicago, Los Angeles. But as if I'm going to go to, say, smaller towns to just do free events at their convenience, it's always later. And they never do the math to see if that's a win for me. You know, I want to go to Charlotte one time to see it and kind of check that off the bucket list. I'm not going back there every year. May grow. You know, this may not age well if Charlotte blows up, but you know my point, right? They never even do the math of how much money is being lost for me to, in opportunity cost for me to go there. So in the same way, I don't want to have that idea towards going to Olympic. You know, it's like, oh, I'll just go later, right? The same thing that people do in Charlotte for a free tour. Yeah, you know, even though I'm here, even though I'm in this corner of the country, even though I'm always going to be busy, even though there's always going to be piles of work, even though there's always going to be a reason not to, it's the delusion of later. The delusion is going to be easier later. Right? Like for me, for example, when I came up here, I even drove the whole coast up. I drove through Big Sur, I did the Oregon coast, I did Mount Rainier, I did the Cascades, I did San Juan's. I'm about to go to Olympic. I'm going to go check out some waterfalls. I'm going to drive back through Crater Lake. Now, when you're hearing these things, you're like, why? First of all, what are those things? You know, why do I need those in my life? What's that even doing for me? That is just a simple example of anything that it is that you'd want to do that you're not doing now, that you think that you're going to do later, right? And so this is something that's very, very pertinent to me because I'll have it to where I have a number of different friends that see me in a state of action, and what they don't realize is that it's the would versus could. If they would just jump on board and just come along with me with the things that I'm doing, they would wind up doing so much. And any of my friends who's ever kind of just rolled with me for like a year, you go find them 10 years later, whether they say I'm the biggest jerk in the world or love me to death, they will say that they did more in that year and have more unique memories from that year than any other year of their life. There is virtually no chance that anybody who hangs out with me for a year is going to have any other year that was more memorable or interesting or expanding or enriching, okay? And that's because this is a basic approach that I have to life. Now, this idea of would versus could, I also translated this and I took it a little bit further based on this idea of momentum. And to me, I believe that, you know, we talk about time being super important, like time is money. I also believe that momentum is money and that focus is money. So when people say that, you know, do you value your time? In my mind, I would say high value people value their time, but high value people also value their focus, and high value people value their momentum. So what I'm also trying to do to kind of beat back against the sort of would versus could thing is I'm aiming to always stay in this state of high momentum with me doing things. And so, for example, I did a lot of travel the past couple years. That's the same kind of momentum that I applied onto social skills. Like, you know, a big one that I had over the years was I wanted to get into all the best nightclubs in the world. So I went out and I went to like tons of major nightclubs, or I want to get into the very best parties in Los Angeles, or I want to throw some of the best parties in Los Angeles. I wanted to do that, or I wanted to meet a range of different people. I wanted to meet my, you know, like the people that I would like fan out for that are celebrities. I didn't want to just meet them and kind of, you know, see them at Runyon Canyon in Los Angeles. I want to actually become friends with them. Why? Because I don't just want to sit there. If it's worth sitting there watching somebody on television or the internet, well then I certainly would at least like to get to hang out and get to know what the person's all about. So this was kind of a list of things that I had when I was younger, of like, you know, meet every type of person socially, you know, date the different kind of people that I want to date. Like, you know, I just see different types of people that I just like to spend time with. And I made sure to go out and actually go see what that was like and have those experiences. You see people like looking at things on the internet, like looking at people they're attracted to on the internet and just kind of like, ooh, look at them, like doing all sorts of like crazy things, if you know what I'm saying. You know, their keyboard's all crusty. And they never stop to think like, why wouldn't you just go meet somebody like that and actually have that experience? Why are you just watching that on the internet? Why aren't you go out and actually doing that? But a lot of people struggle with that as well. So in my mind, it's like, if I'm gonna take the time to watch something like a place I'd wanna go, I'm going there. If I see a kind of person who I'd like to maybe have like a really like kind of beautiful, intimate experience with, well then I want to go have that experience. If there's a restaurant that I'd, you know, type of food I'd see, I want to go there. So whatever this is experientially, I want to have that. And those are surface level experiences. And I understand though that I want to have momentum with that. I also want to have momentum with depth. That could be something like meditation. That could be something like learning to have greater appreciation, tapping in spiritually. There's some momentum behind that as well. So I'm always looking to spin the tire on both outer experiences and breadth, but also on inner experiences and depth. It's a point of pride for me that I can be in nature and I can make myself cry. And in a ton of the videos that I'm coming out, you'll see me cry like almost every video. I'll just look at something and I'll start crying. And that's because when you look at something with total depth and you connect to it, it can bring you to tears. And if you can't do that, it's because you're weak and you're hiding, because life is that beautiful, but you fail to realize the beauty of life. Likewise, though, you also want to go and do different things. So for me, what I did was I did a lot of different calculations, and I calculated, do I want to do a mostly profitable business? Now, I've done over 100 million in sales in my life, but if I'm going to do a pure profit business, I would have done in billions by now, in my opinion. You know, a lot of people that I coach are there, so I know I kind of know what it would take, and I believe that I could do it quite easily, or at least with focus. But that wasn't my thing, because I realized that I wasn't going to be able to have as many different experiences, but also that I wouldn't be able to have the same depth of experience as I could maybe coaching people or being on stage or being out in nature and doing video content or sharing value. So I wanted to do something that was very value sharing driven, life-changing, but also something that was gave me a lot of different experiences, but also something where, you know, I could be sitting at 42 and say, okay, I've done over 100 million in sales. So I want it to be something where I do well, very well, but I don't want to just, you know, become dedicated to something that's hollow or empty or isn't fun. So I'm always kind of fueling that momentum all the time, because I understand that to get there, momentum is money, time is money, focus is money. And so I'm always trying to get back time. I'm always trying to get back momentum, or keep spitting momentum, and I'm always trying to reclaim focus all the time to get this. Now, the last point that I want to make here that I think is quite valuable is this. I really, really believe that life, the way that most people live it, is unnatural, and that's just my view. I think it's very unnatural, and I think it's actually rotting them out on a core level. So if I believe for even 2 seconds that the average person walking down the street that isn't doing this was happy, I wouldn't even be putting out a video like this. And I think that maybe some people are happy. They're very simple, very kind of Forrest Gump-like. But I think most people are actually very, very bitter for the fact that they have this huge opportunity called life, and they're not going and having a range of experiences, but they're also having very, very surface level experiences. So the thing with me is that I'm actually very connected to the sadness that I have around the fact that, you know, if I'm not doing what I want to do, I'm connected to that. I don't hide from that. So if you actually look at society, the way that it kind of functions is that you almost wind up becoming this battery for the system. And the system has a lot of good parts in it. Don't get me wrong. It's a better system than, you know, other systems or things we've had in the past that were quite violent. But understand that you wind up becoming a battery for the system. And then as this battery in the system, what winds up happening is they give you this really, really mind-numbing entertainment, really, really mind-numbing food. And these different corporations kind of put these things in front of your face to keep you very, very numb. And look, it's not their job to unplug you from the matrix. That's your job. They're just doing their job trying to run a business. I'm not blaming them. I'm not wishing bad on them. I wish good on them. I wish them to be prosperous and create jobs. I'm just saying that on your end, it's not your responsibility to sit there complaining about that, but rather your responsibility is to recognize this pattern that's happening and recognize that you're sad. So for me, like, I get it. Like, I get it that if I'm just like, you know, I just got some crusty keyboard and I'm seeing something and, you know, that I find to be amazing that I want to experience, I understand at a high level that that's not living life. I get that. So I take ownership of that, and I recognize how much it sucks to not have that, and then I begin taking massive action because I'm honest with myself that that's what I want. I feel like people just aren't honest with themselves about what they want. You know, they tell themselves all these lies that they're happy, or just say they're unhappy and play the victim, but whatever the case, they're always deceiving themselves. They're also deceiving themselves about their power, and they have a lot of disowned power. This is what I was saying earlier in the video about this idea of, you know, the movie The Edge, right? You know, what one person could do, another person could do. Realizing how much power you actually own. So for me, what happens is that when I'm just sitting there just doing the same boring thing again and again, like frankly, if I was living your life, if you're like 99% of people, frankly, that I see in society, you may personally be different, but if I'm living your life statistically, again, maybe not you, I actually get incredibly depressed, and I feel incredibly sad, and I feel like a huge failure, and I sit there and I'll kind of have like a dark night of the soul, and I'll sit there kind of with like, you know, face in my palms of my hands, and I'm just like, why is it like this? Like, this is a rare opportunity. Like, life is a rare opportunity. The gift of consciousness, the gift of just look at this whole amazing city that people, you know, have gone and built back here. Like, just the gift of this, you know, like this is a gift. And I view it like there's all these people who have died and who have struggled and who have been through great pain so that I could live my cool little life of just running around Seattle and having an airplane and having a cell phone and getting to talk to the internet and all this stuff. Like, in my mind, I have appreciation for that. So I view that as an obligation to, whether it's, you know, the people that have suffered to create civil rights, or the people that have suffered to and told to create all these fun things that I can go experience, to God for creating nature and the air and the earth, to the little, apparently if we believe evolutionary theory, which I wasn't there, but it sounds right, I don't know, you know, the little amoeba that then crawled onto the land, that, you know, fought and was a cave person and all that stuff, so that I could sit here and have this amazing life. So I'm going to go out and I'm actually going to enjoy it. So I have a sense of the urgency of it. I have a high sense of urgency. I have a high sense of gratitude. I have a high sense of macro momentum that I'm always fueling. I'm always trying to reclaim focus and reclaim time so that I can go out and do the things that I want. And I'm frankly willing to destabilize my life and willing to get out of my comfort zone to go and get those things. And that sounds really, really glamorous on the surface. Like, yeah, get out of your comfort zone. Yeah, cliched advice for everybody. But it's actually painful. I've dealt with a lot. I've been through a lot of turmoil, and I've paid the price to be able to have those experiences. And let me tell you another thing too. Many of those experiences that I had were not hedonistically more pleasurable than the pain that I got in suffering to get those experiences. But I understood that life is not always about, like life is not just about the ratio of hedonistic pleasure that you get relative to pain avoidance. In my mind, what life is about is actually staying present to the moment and accepting all the difficulty of life, and then going through that pain, but staying present to it, because what that does is it trains your own awakening anyway, and it primes you for gratitude for when you do get what you want, and you can even be grateful for the pain while you have it too, because you're alive and you have the gift of consciousness. So what it does is that it trains the mind to stay present to things that are hard, trains the mind to have gratitude, and then when you get the thing that you want, then you celebrate that. But that's a better mode of being, rather than just saying, well, you know, say that I go on a camping trip, you know, it costs this much money, it's this much time away from work, it's you know, this much in transportation. By the time that I get there, I look at the little fireplace, it wasn't worth it. And I frankly think that's why a lot of different people do this, is that they're literally, they just don't see the upside, and they just feel like the juice isn't worth the squeeze. But their consciousness is miswired to where they're gonna be a battery in the matrix, and in this weird derp state for life, they're not gonna get out of it, and that's really, really a sad thing. It's not a very, very nice thing at all. So these are things that you wanna just, you know, either let land or not, would versus could. Yes, there is this big menu of options that you have in life of things that you could do, but will you? That's the bottom line, will you? And what we'll be going into in future videos is setting your life up to where you actually are likely to go ahead and do that. Is it actually gonna happen? I'm gonna put out a program called Endless Motivation, and I'm gonna go very, very deep on this. And actually, if you even want, it's not even out yet as recording this, you'll see it out later if you're seeing it later. Click the link below if you wanna get on the waiting list for it, or if you're seeing it later, it may be available, or I may have pulled it by then. But if you're interested to learn more, I'm gonna actually do some personal coaching in this program as well, because I just see this as being such a major problem that people aren't addressing. So click that link below now if you actually want to go deeper on this, and I'll be back with more this week, like with more, and we'll be out here in the Northwest shooting more videos, having fun, delivering for you, and thinking about what it would mean to actually be able to use a lot of these ideas that we're talking about, because you've got the firepower to do so. Now, if you've never seen Gattaca, it's a movie from maybe 20 years ago. It's a classic. And what it is that in the future, some people are genetically engineered to have a lot of advantages, and other people, they didn't have that genetic engineering and they have disadvantages, and so they probably can't accomplish as much. And so the movie is a film about the human spirit and how there's two brothers, one who is, been genetically altered to be superior, and the other one who just has normal genes. And the one who has normal genes actually winds up outperforming the one with superior genes. And that is through the power of the human spirit and laser-like focus on his goal. So the character Vincent, his goal is that he wants to get into outer space. And he has to outperform people and sneak around hiding the fact that he doesn't have these genetic alterations. And he winds up achieving his ultimate goal of going to space. And there's this beautiful scene in the movie where he's actually swimming with his brother. And his brother's supposed to be superior to him. And they're swimming and they're swimming and they're swimming. They're actually having a race. And it's the middle of the night. And his brother says to him, Vincent, how are you doing this? And Vincent says, you want to know how I'm doing this? You want to know? I never saved anything for the way back.
Vincent! Vincent! Where's the shore? We're too far out.
You want to quit?
We're too far out!
You want to quit?
No! Vincent! How are you doing this, Vincent? How have you done any of this? We have to go back. It's too late for that. We're close to the other side. What other side? You want to drown us both? You want to know how I did it? This is how I did it, Anton. I never saved anything for the swim back.
Many different goals that you have, you are going to have to put so much gas in the tank. You are going to have to push the gas down so hard that there's other things that you might wind up giving up. Let me talk to you a little bit about things that I've wound up giving up to do what it is that I want to do. A major one is my peace of mind. I've given up a huge amount of peace of mind to do what I want to do. Now, paradoxically, and I'm going to talk about this in other videos, by giving up my peace of mind, it had to train me to get more present. And so as a result, my mind is actually trained to be present amongst, amidst chaos. So ironically, I actually earned real peace of mind, not just the hidden peace of mind that most people have. But nonetheless, I've given up my peace of mind. I've given up a huge amount of stability. I've done things that, frankly, I think most people would be unwilling to do, as far as pushing themselves and as far as getting out of their comfort zone to get where it is that I want to get to. So that, for me, was worth it. Okay? Now, why is it that that was worth it for me? I believe that I'm simply more connected to the pain of how boring life is. And I truly believe that. And I've thought of this from many, many different angles. Like, I thought of this like, am I maybe traumatized from when I'm a kid and I just can't sit with myself? Like I'm just uncomfortable in my own skin. Is that why I don't just want to sit and just do the same boring thing? Is that why? Is it ADD? What is it, right? I've really, really thought about this. And I've thought about it from every different angle. And the conclusion that I've personally come to at age 42 is that the average person is simply in a lot of pain and they're just numbing it and numbing it and numbing it with alcohol, with the internet, with their boring job, just anything to escape it, to numb it, to medicate it, to run away from it, to float above it. There is a pain that you actually have to not expanding, to not becoming more, to not experiencing more. And so as a result of that, if you look at somebody like Vincent in that movie, yes, he paid a high price, but at the same time, the depth of his life in doing so is going to be worth more than just living a life that is very, very small. So I'm just connected to that simple principle. So see, for me, I'm the kind of person where, when I first started traveling, for example, I was sleeping on couches. I was sleeping on floors. If I went to London, I was sleeping 2 hours outside the city. In that case, a city called Kingston, not Kingston where I came from in Canada or where I did school in Canada, but a city called Kingston, 2 hours or whatever it is outside of London, where I'm sleeping on a floor in Kingston, taking a bus all the way back in, and then just getting to experience London, for a few hours in the day and then going back out. And I'm doing so on a very, very tight budget, not knowing how I'm going to eat and not knowing how I'm going to get to the next destination. I slept on floors for very many years. It was the same thing with me actually wanting to meet people. I wanted to, I look at the internet, you see most people look at the internet of people that are attracted to, they got their crusty keyboard going, and in my mind, I want to have real life experiences like the things I saw on the internet, because I just felt that that was something that made life worthwhile. It wasn't something I needed for validation. It wasn't something that I needed to know who I am. It was something that I wanted to do to have the joy of life, to actually be passionate about life. Passion, real passion about life. It's coming from a place of passion and expansion. It's coming from a place of saying, who would you have to become and what would you have to learn to have those types of experiences, and challenging yourself rather than being like 99.9% of people who will never have that, actually going out and getting it. That was where the joy came from for me. So it didn't bother me, to go out to social gatherings again and again and again and fail again and again and again, to be scared again and again and again, and to do this again and again. It didn't bother me to do that, because I understood that even though that was painful, that I would expand and that my life would be a lot richer for it. So that was understood to me. And I've done this at every single angle, okay? In the same way, I understood when I want to build social media, it would be very, very hard. I wasn't naturally good at talking into a camera. I understood I had to push myself. I understood that I had to bring the camera with me all over the world, just keep trying and trying and trying, practicing. I understood that when I ran a business that I didn't understand business. I understood there'd be a lot of things that were messed up. I got that. When I had my business with many different coaches, I knew years in advance that there was going to be problems with that team. I got that. It was completely obvious to me. But I acted as the glue to hold it together as long as I could and to mediate between all these different very, very strong personalities. I did that because I understood that when all was said and done and when I'm dead, the legacy of what that team built could never go away. So I put myself in very, very weird and uncomfortable positions for a very, very long time. But I did that knowing the work that it was that we would create. So, in doing these sorts of things, you've got to ask yourself, do you want to play big or do you want to play small? And what I would say to you is, if you're truly okay with playing small, then own that fully. But I would ask you, are you actually okay with it? And in my opinion, our nature, the way that we're built, is we are built to be explorers. We're built to go experience the world. We're built to experience higher level paradigms. Why do I know this? Basic history, basic understanding of history, basic understanding of archaeology. Human beings are these huge travelers. We conquered the earth. I also understand higher levels of paradigms in your psyche and in your spiritual growth. I know what those paradigms are. That's a potential that you have, that you can achieve. I understand that there's these different paradigms that we have in our minds that we can move into. Higher levels of awareness, higher levels of competence, very, very much expanded awareness of what it is that you can actually perceive, the ability to perceive something with more depth, the ability to think laterally, the ability to do many, many different things. We have so much that we have that ability to do. So in seeing that that's a potential that we have, and seeing that we're built to be explorers, and then you see just how unnatural it is. The people all around here, it's just incredibly unnatural, and really they're wasting their lives as batteries. So for me, I never viewed it like death was something to be avoided. I viewed it like life is something to be achieved. Okay, what you're seeing, out in the regular world is that many people who view death avoidance as their highest priority. I don't ever want to get somebody hurt or encourage recklessness. I don't. But understand that the perspective that I view it as is that life is something to be achieved. So you have to achieve awakening. You have to achieve personhood. You have to achieve a great and rich life. These are things that you have to go after. So when you see, when you see people who simply struggle with motivation, in my mind, they're just really too much of an optimist. Like, they think that they're already a person. They think that they already have a cool life. They think that they're already in an elevated state of mind. It's very optimistic. It's very cute. In my mind, I'm more of a pessimist. I'm like, am I really built to do this? Like, is this really what life was meant to be? Am I awake right now? Is my psyche, in my consciousness, is it expanded? Am I doing the kind of things that are going to challenge me and force me to grow? When you're in that discomfort and you're in high degrees of discomfort, that's also challenging your mind to find peace in difficult situations. When I'm sleeping on a floor somewhere, and that's very, very painful, understand that for me, that pain is actually what helps me to evolve psychologically, because it's that discomfort that helps you to grow. So I come from that standpoint that, a human life, it has a certain intention behind it and a certain potential, a seed of potential inside of it, and it's your responsibility and duty to your creator, to your ancestors, to your potential, to actually go out and fulfill it. And that doesn't mean anything crazy like that you can't watch a television program or that you can't eat a donut, right? You can't take a day off or a week off. It doesn't mean that you can't, I don't smoke weed myself. It doesn't mean you couldn't smoke a blunt in your house while, staring at the internet if you want to. I'm not saying you can't do those things, but it's not what you do sometimes to take a break that's the problem. It's what you're doing most of the time. So what I would encourage you to do is I'd ask you a couple things. One is, are you really a person? Now, you're a person I'm not dehumanizing you. You're a person who deserves life no matter where you're at. But when you truly think of what a person is, do you really even have any kind of proactive consciousness that you would define as being a person? When you look at the experience that you're having in life, like, is this really what you were here to do? When you look at the different potentials and competencies that you could build, are you actually leading into some of those and actually cultivating them? So it's not so much about, you know, get the money, dollar bills, y'all, you know, go hook up, woo, 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 right? Like, that sounds fun, and that's another type of motivation I'll talk about in the series. But it's also about recognizing your potential, who you are, what you're doing here, what this place is, and who you are beyond. So that's the kind of message that I want to leave with you. Again, going back to the idea of Vincent, he's swimming, he's going for what he wants. He never saved anything for the way back. And even if you go out in some kind of end way that sucks or is negative or horrible or embarrassing, you could never take back that life that you achieved. That's the message I want to leave you with in this idea of endless motivation. I'm going to wind up putting out a program on this. Maybe you're seeing this later. Click the link below, and we're going to talk a lot more deeply about this, because I really believe that motivation, you know, on one level with motivation, is kind of a mandatory minimum for us to even have a conversation. So many people that are already motivated coming out of the box. Why should I have to motivate you? You should either want it or not. If you don't want it, there's too many people that can outcompete you. But on the other hand, motivation is something learnable. And that's actually what we're learning here in this program. And that's actually what we're learning here in this series. So I want to actually motivate you in this series, and I want to keep going deeper. I want to get it to where whatever it is that you want to do, you can actually go get it. You know how to trigger your brain, like riding a horse. You can just ride the horse and it's going to take you where you want to go. You excited? I'm excited for you too. Peace.